Churches and families both want the same thing: to work together to support the faith of children and young people. According to Dr. Sarah Holmes, whose national survey, Taking the Pulse, interviewed young people, parents, church leaders and volunteers to find out how to encourage faith in children and young people. The temptation is to see church as the spiritual experts, a bit like school might be the educational experts, and parents often feel underqualified or lacking in confidence to pass on faith to their children. Today, I'm speaking with Anna Hawken, Ministry Lead of Parenting for Faith. Parenting for Faith was founded by Rachel Turner, who we've had on the podcast before, and it's all about equipping parents to be the primary place of discipleship for their children. Anna and I talk about building parents' confidence and resolve and removing guilt, judgment and shame. We also talk about what we can say as we're leading services that empowers and equips parents, leading to more spiritual conversations. I think you'll be inspired and equipped and find resources and tools you can share with families in your church. Thanks for joining us on the Roots for Churches podcast. Here we go. Great to have you on the Roots for Churches podcast. So glad you could be here.
Thanks for having me, Melanie.
This is great. Anna and I have been friends for a while, and so this is great that we get to talk about Parenting for Faith and how that ministry can really serve churches, church leaders, families all across the UK and beyond. So how long have you been part of Parenting for Faith?
For nearly 8 years now, since it was part of BRF Ministries. BRF Ministries has four ministries, and Parenting for Faith is one of those. But actually, my relationship with Parenting for Faith goes back way before I was working with them. So Rachel Turner was pioneering Parenting for Faith in churches, sort of 2010, that kind of time. And that was when I first met her and got involved.
Oh, and what's your background? Are you part of leading church? I know you've got a few children, so there's the link for the parenting that side.
Yep. Yeah, so I was a children's and families minister in a church, and I've got 4 under 10s, so I wear my parent hat as well, and volunteer just in my local church at the moment.
Fantastic. Okay, so for people who haven't heard of Rachel Turner's books about Parenting for Faith, they haven't heard of Parenting for Faith, can you give me sort of, in a nutshell, like where did this come from? What is this all about, Parenting for Faith?
So really, it's about the God's plan for discipleship of children and young people. I mean, Deuteronomy 6, it says, talk about faith as you walk along the road and as you go to bed at night and all those sorts of things. And Rachel Turner was working in a local church, working super, super hard, as loads of us do in children's ministry, preparing amazing activities, really investing lots in making the teams work, all those kind of things. But realised that actually there was only so much that you could do on a Sunday, even with a holiday club and an after-school club and Friday night and all those things. It can only take you so far. And, really had a chat with God and a little bit of inspiration about that the people who are best equipped to grow faith in children and young people are the people who know them best, who have the most time with them, and who are there in those everyday moments where faith is grown. When you're walking along the road or going to bed, or throw in the modern day equivalents like in the car on the way to swimming, or bringing them back from a party, or on the school run, or sitting for hours by the toilet because they're potty training, or, whatever it might be. But why are we investing so much time and energy on that 1 or 2 hours of the week when there's another 160 something hours? And yes, they're asleep for some of them, they're at school for some of them, but the parents or primary carers are the ones who are with them for most of that time. So Rachel set about really just trying to equip those parents and carers to give them confidence and to give them tools and skills, really. And that has grown over the years into 11 books, 5 courses, website with kind of 300 articles, a weekly podcast. But at the heart of it, it's all the same. It's all saying, how can we put parents and carers front and center? How can we say, you can be confident, you've got this, we're going to give you some skills and tools. We've got 5 tools, kind of key tools that we teach at Parenting for Faith. Just to upskill them and say, go for it. You're already doing lots of this, but keep at it. That's what's really going to make a difference to your children and young people.
And do you think, because I think that confidence piece is really key, like there is a lack of confidence in some parents to do spiritual stuff with their children. They might feel like, well, I don't know my Bible well enough. I've not been a Christian very long. Or am I even living this? Am I going to be a hypocrite if I tell my kids to do this? And I think there's also something in the structure of church. Like the more that church does, here's a fantastic youth group, here's a fantastic children's group, send us your kids, we'll teach them about God. That well-intentioned program actually disempowers parents because it sort of says, well, the experts are doing it. Like I send my kids to school and they teach them to read and they teach them maths. I don't want to get in the way and teach them the wrong thing. So I'm just going to back off. So there's something about the way of that most of the Western world is doing church with children's groups that I think has disempowered parents. How can we get back towards that confidence and re-empowering? It feels like it's a big shift. Like instead of send us your kids, it's like, no, you do it. And I think a lot of parents would panic.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a tricky balance here that it can also go the other way, that we can say, here, parents, it's all down to you. Good luck. And actually as a church, we can, sort of have no responsibilities at all. And that's not right either. Church is there to be a supportive community, to encourage, to equip, to cheer on, all those kind of things. It's super, super important. We have a way of explaining it that we call being the dentist or being IKEA, which is, I don't know how you feel when you go to the dentist, but I'm super glad that those people have trained and they've got loads of experience and knowledge. And I know it's good for me. So I want to go. But I feel pretty uncomfortable. Like I brush my teeth pretty hard before I go. And I know they're going to ask, like, do I floss every day? And like, I don't. And I feel really bad about that. And so I kind of dread it. And I feel a little bit nervous and a little bit uncomfortable.
Like
and
you're
I think
going to be
that's how a lot
judged,
of
really. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a
It's
judgment
a
space,
thing,
isn't it?
and it's looking somewhere quite personal and quite private, right? In your mouth. It's sort of, you can feel quite vulnerable and quite exposed. And I think that's how a lot of parents and carers feel about coming to church. It's like, I'm glad they exist. I know we need you. We know this is important. But actually, I feel like I'm going to be judged. I feel like I'm going to be found to be lacking. I don't quite do it. I don't, we don't have a Bible, or I don't remember the last time we did it, or we did those devotionals for 2 days and then the dog got sick and we were late and then we never did them again. It's that kind of vibe. And so the alternative to that is to be like IKEA. Now, I know not everyone loves IKEA, but they are very popular for a reason. They're very successful for a reason. And that is that they welcome people in. They think about what they might need. So there's delicious food, there's childcare, there's a gigantic toilet where you can fit a double buggy and as an adult go to the toilet and take change a baby and all those kind of things. And they display a really wide range of things. If you're going to IKEA to buy a chair, there's not just one chair, right? There's 25
Too many
chairs.
choices.
Exactly. And you can go and try it out. You can sit on all the different chairs. You can feel the material. You can see what it looks like in a home setting. And the sort of layouts they have aren't big fancy mansions. They're like houses that you or I might actually have. And they've said, look, when you have really small amount of space, here's what it could look like and that kind of thing. And so whenever we're planning activities or services, those kind of things, it's a really helpful question to ask ourselves. Is this going to make the parents feel like they're going to the dentist, or are they going to IKEA? Are we setting a standard that actually they maybe can't meet, or they're going to feel a bit judged or uncomfortable? Or are we saying, come on in, come as you are. We want to hear from you what you need. We want to meet that. We want to help you and support you. Here's loads and loads of different options of ways that you can see what it might look like and try it out and kind of display that whole range, and just keep reiterating that message that there is no one size that fits all. Every family's unique, every child's unique, and parents are the experts in their own children. So we want to help you find what works for you, not dictate it in a way that you're just going to try and fail and feel really rubbish about that.
So I love that idea of church being this place where you can try things out and you can do things with your family. I suppose I'm picturing like a traditional Sunday service.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're there and your kids are standing next to you or in worship with you, quite often there's not a lot of family interaction where that would get modeled. So if you have a church like that, where a lot of things are done from the front, like what's the space where you model this family stuff? Now, I can see the end before the question, like I can see like if you're doing an intergenerational service, then there's opportunities to turn and model things in families. But if churches are only doing, an intergen all age service once a month, or even not, it's not popular in their church, where do you create space for this IKEA experience of family faith? Is there other models or churches doing it different ways?
I think the age thing actually throws people off. So thinking about, okay, we've got under 10s in church or under 18s in church or whatever it might be. How are we going to make this work for them? It's, maybe we feel like it's not a great setup, or we're not quite sure how to explain it, because then we get very into, right, well, what does the average 7-year-old need or the average 14-year-old need? Whereas actually we're all people on a journey, different places of faith, different backgrounds, different ways that we like to interact with things, and different learning styles, all that kind of thing. So if we can think a bit broader about, someone who's new to church and it's their first time, whether they're 3 or 33 or 73, actually, what is it that they need to know in order to be able to feel comfortable and welcome, and also to kind of, truly engage and interact with God as well? So it might require a little bit of framing from the service leader, for example. So say you're reading the Bible. We often just get to that point and someone stands up and reads the Bible. But a little bit of explanation around that of, okay, we're going to read the Bible now, and we believe that this is God's word to us. And that there are things we can learn from it. Maybe a very brief explanation of, this is history, this is something that really happened a long time ago, or this is a story Jesus told to his followers to help them understand something, or this is a letter that Paul wrote to a church, something like that, just so you've got a little bit of context. And again, that's not about age, that's just about understanding what it is. And then give people some options for how they interact. You might like to follow along. It will be on, there's a Bible in front of you and it will be on this page, or it's going to come up on the screen or be in the service sheet, something like that. Or you might just want to sit quietly and close your eyes and see if a word or phrase stands out to you. But whatever it is, ask God what it means, or ask him to help you remember that for the rest of the day. So it's not so much about, is that an appropriate activity for a 5-year-old or a 25-year-old? It's more just a little bit of explanation, 1 or 2 extra sentences. We know you don't have all the time in the world to go into deep theological explanations, but can you add in a few little words or phrases that help people to understand what's going on, and also to have options for how they can engage and how they can interact with it, I think.
So I think you alluded to this before, that in Parenting for Faith, you have 5 different sort of principles or things that you're teaching. And one of those, I'm sure, is framing, which is kind of what you're illustrating for us. This idea of, often these things just sort of happen in church, or they happen in spiritual life. And so it is that literally putting a picture frame, drawing lines around this and saying, this is what this is. I'm explaining it and drawing your attention to it. And if you've been in church a long time, it's like, your house, you don't even notice the pictures on the wall anymore. They become part of the scenery. And so it does help to really think through the eyes of somebody new to church, or through the eyes of a child. How does this thing that we always do come across to somebody who's never experienced this before, or doesn't have a frame for it, or doesn't know what it is? Can you unpack a bit more of that, or show us some of the other tools from Parenting for Faith?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it is just, lots of things we do in church are a little bit unusual. And if you can think of it, maybe it helps to not just think from a child's perspective, but from someone who is visiting for the first time. I remember going into a friend who was kind of just exploring faith, and I took her to church the first time, and we got to the piece, and she ran and hid in the toilet. She was like, what was that? And what was going on? Why did people I don't know were like trying to hug me, or just thought it was really, really strange. And I thought, yeah, absolutely, that was my mistake. That I could have given her a little bit of a heads up of, this is what's going to happen now, and this is what it's going to look like, and this is why we do it. And if that feels weird and uncomfortable, you can totally opt out, and that would make them feel a little bit more comfortable. But yeah, I mean, there's so, as you said, framing's one of 5 key tools. So the others are creating windows, which is just helping children or young people or adults of any age to see or hear a little bit of your relationship with God. So in a service, that might look like sharing. Actually, I find it really hard to read the Bible, but I've been listening to it in the car at the moment, and that's been really helping me. This week, this verse stood out. Something like that. Framing, which we've talked a little bit about, which is just drawing people's attention to things, really encouraging questions and helping people to explore questions, to ask questions, and to be okay with that, and to feel confident about exploring them, even if they might not know the answer. Unwinding, which is thinking about having a broad and balanced view of God, that it's very easy God is so broad and so big, isn't he, that it's very easy to look at one angle and miss the bigger picture. So if you're reading a Bible passage that's particularly focused on, I don't know, the wrath of God, or how powerful and strong and mighty he is, giving a bit of explanation, a bit of context of, but God is also merciful. He's also there in the detail. He wants to hear about what's important to you and the things that you care about, can be really helpful, and kind of spotting when people pick up those views and unwinding them and just giving a little bit of a broader picture. Another one is chat and catch, which is just prayer. I'm sure all of you are finding different creative ways to pray, but really just encouraging everyone of all ages to talk to God about anything, anytime, anywhere, and being ready to receive his communication back. We can often assume that's going to be an audible voice if we talk about hearing God's voice. But actually we see in the Bible, don't we, that God communicates in so many ways, whether that's through emotions or other people or scripture or dreams or, all those kind of things. So just being aware of that. And then for, the final one is surfing the waves, which is just recognizing that the Christian journey is very up and down. It's not all neat and tidy and tied up in a bow. And sometimes we accidentally give the impression that it is, but that all of us, and particularly children and young people, will go through phases of having different interests and passions and all those kind of things. And so, it's coming alongside other people and helping them find a next step without forcing them down a little channel that they need to do that for a long time, going too slowly.
No, it's good. And I think that idea that our growth in Christian life is consistent, and particularly because children go through education, there's this idea of like they're always growing and they're always taking steps forward, that you can feel a lot of shame or guilt as a parent if your child all of a sudden goes through a stage of, I hate church, I don't want to go. And sometimes that's to do with they've fallen out with a kid who's in their group, or they don't like being with their siblings, or they're tired from playing football all day Saturday, or whatever it was that they did. Or they pick up on their parents' anxiety about church, all that kind of, you never quite know what's going on in the back of a child's mind. Well, you can have the conversation, but sometimes they don't always know. But there's this sort of feeling of like people's relationship with God or their engagement with church fluctuates. And then we feel like, oh no, we're bad parents.
Yes.
Everybody should love being here and being together. And this is really hard. Not wanting to say that or vocalize that because we worry that there'll be judgment. Perhaps it's like the dentist admitting you don't floss, admitting that your family doesn't love church every Sunday.
Same thing again, isn't it? Yeah. And it just gives people permission to grow, to have good conversations, because what's the alternative, right? You either squash it down and pretend everything's okay, or you hide stuff, or just all things that are not helpful for having a lifelong healthy relationship with church and with God.
Totally. Yeah, no, it's good. So we've kind of talked about like this whole idea of parenting for faith is building parents' confidence to engage with their children. So some of that can be done through the language of how we are in church. So we kind of model little bits. But I think, is there something about naming what you're doing as well? So, the framing idea.
Yeah.
You might, I feel like there's something key about like, oh, that's what the church leaders, some people, a church leader gets up and does something and it's so natural and you're like, oh, that's really good. That's a really good way in. But as a parent, you're like, how do I then apply that at home when I'm trying to get my family to do a devotional and they don't want to do it? Or how do I do, prayers at bedtime when my kid is resisting and saying, there's nothing to thank God for? Like how? And so I wonder if part of it is, as a church leader, when you're leading the service, it's like, let's draw a frame around this so we can understand what we're trying to do, or let's talk about how we receive from God, chat and catch. So like you actually kind of name these tools as you frame and as you facilitate, so that it then does really equip the parents to take the tool and do it somewhere else.
Yeah, so I think when you start trying to get your head around this, it can feel like, whoa, this is massive culture change. We need to, a big meeting and a big plan and to change everything. And actually, it's about tiny, small shifts in language, in that framing that we were talking about, in the way that you do things. So I'd really encourage you to start small. Don't try and change everything at once and it feel really overwhelming. And that will help people to come on the journey with you as well. If it helps, you can, to get your head around these key tools, on our website, we've got each one just a little 1 to 2 minute video, ideas of things to try and kind of frequently asked questions. That's the York Notes guide. That's the kind of quick version. Or obviously you can do one of the Parenting for Faith courses, and that might give you a bit more confidence for what you're talking about. And you can say to other people, hey, we're trying this approach. You can check out this website or read these books. But more than that, I think it's just little shifts, even if on your website you say every family is different and we want to support you, or parents know their children best, everyone's welcome here, whatever it might be, or in a one-liner in the welcome, or in your notice sheet, or in the way that when parents pick children up from groups, if you have like Sunday school groups, something like that, that you kind of equip them and say, you've got the rest of the week with them. We really want to support you to keep going with this. Tiny little changes in language I think can make a really big difference. And it can feel like you're not really getting anywhere. But if you could change it on all those things, just a tiny little bit on your website, on the upfront stuff, in the children's groups, in emails, whatever it might be, however you communicate, those things really build up, and that drip feed takes everyone on a journey with you and helps them to kind of embrace that change and really kind of take that message on board.
Because part of what prompted this conversation is some research that Sarah Holmes did about what do Christian parents actually want the church to do. They want to work in partnership with the church, but what do they want? And they don't want the church to just give them a devotional book and say, go and do this at home. That feels a bit like the dentist. Let's be honest. Here's something that I will check up on you later and see, have you done it? And then you can feel guilty about it. So they're not asking for that. They're asking for one big thing was like relationship. They want conversation that helps build confidence. And the other thing, they did want resources, but it was not like a devotional resource. It was like a creative, interactive resource. Here's some ideas of things to do with your family. So Roots produce Thrive every week that comes out alongside the weekly resources, and it's a take-home sheet. It's PDF. You can email it. You can put it on your church WhatsApp. You can hand it out when the kids get collected, or you can hand it out at the end of the service. It works across all the ages. So it works if you've got people in a home who are in their 70s or 80s and can't come to the church service. It works if you've got a family with young children. It works with teenagers. And there are ideas like bake a cake and talk about this together, or go for a walk around your neighborhood and spot these things and pray for this. So they're accessible at all these ages and levels, and it's not the kind of thing you're going to get quizzed on. And people don't think, oh, I couldn't go for a walk, because they're like, I can do that, and it's one question to ask. So it feels quite doable and not judgy. Again, it's a bit more IKEA. Here's some ideas to try, and people go, oh, that would fit with my lifestyle, and they don't feel like I've got to tick them all off and get them all done. So we've talked about how you can kind of model this from a church leader perspective and change like communication from the front of church or in the website. But what if you are listening to this and you're more of a children's worker? You're like, oh, I wish I could bring that level of change, but I don't feel like I've got that much control. How can a lowly children's worker, and I want to say that that's definitely a bit sarcastic, because I think you're not lowly at all. You have way more influence than you know, but it can feel like I don't have that much influence. So what can children's workers do to help support parents and families building faith at home?
So I'd actually say something really similar, which is start small. Even if you're really excited about this and you're desperate to see change, sometimes then if you jump in with both feet, you can put people off. Like, you could be so keen at changing lots all at once that it's too much. So actually, if it is only small changes you can make, that actually might work in your favor. And it's just looking at everything that you do, or everything that you're planning to do, if you don't have any children in your congregation at the moment, and saying, what little shift could we make in the culture, in the language, in the messaging, and what we do that equips parents and carers for the whole week, and that communicates that message that they're the experts in their children and they're the best ones to disciple them. So let's say you don't have any children on a Sunday, or you have a couple in like a creche at the back, but you have a small toddler group during the week. Could you start playing some Christian music, make a playlist of Christian kids songs, or have that as some of your time? I know loads of you do that already, but send that home and say, kids love music. We know how much they love the songs. And this is really a way that you can connect with God at home. Here's the playlist. Feel free to personalize it. Keep the ones in that you like, kill the ones that you find annoying, make it work for your family. And maybe it's the music you play when you tidy up, or you're getting ready in the morning, or going to bed, whatever it might be. So give them lots of options, but link it into, hey, these songs that we're learning in toddler group, you could learn at home. Or say you read a Bible story in that creche time or in the toddler group. Just giving parents some language of what that looks like. So you get the Bible out and say, we read all sorts of stories, don't we? Because we do with under fives, but this is God's special book. It's his words to us. And this story that we're reading today is about something that really happened a long time ago. And then as you're reading, pull out language. If it says disciples, you might want to say, Jesus' disciples, that just means his friends. When you're reading at home, you can give them a heads up like that for any confusing words. And give them ways to interact with the story. So, if someone's feeling sad, you can say, Peter was feeling really sad here. I wonder, have you ever felt sad? You want to tell God about a time where you felt really sad? And then we're just going to ask him to come close and to make you feel loved and safe in that moment. Or, whatever it might be. But they're not things that are so big and fundamental that it needs to go up several levels of authority and have a big vote on and lots of discussion about a long-term strategy. Often if you do those little changes, then people start to engage with that, they start to interact, and they want to have a little bit more. So I think that can work really well.
And so we've talked about sort of resourcing and equipping parents, and all these ideas and tools. I know you guys have a website that has tons of these in sort of bite-sized chunks. And that's another way that children's workers or church leaders can pass on this information, is they might go and find something on your website and share that particular link to that short little video. And it's just put that in a parent's Facebook group, a parent's WhatsApp group, share it on your toddler group site, that kind of stuff. Again, it's just that little, here's something a little bit more. And it doesn't feel quite so preachy if they're watching it on their own phone later.
Yeah, and I think keep it really, really bite-sized. We do call them courses, because that's the sort of journey that we've been on. But I think course feels like, it's this big thing like Alpha, or where I've got to find a time and a room and, lots of resources to make it happen. But if you think of it a bit more like, the next thing on Netflix to binge watch or whatever, videos, little things, like you say, that you send out in a WhatsApp group, or you say, hey, next time you're doing the ironing or you're commuting and you want something to watch or listen to, try this episode of the Parenting for Faith podcast, or watch this little video. It's from a course, and this bit's about Chat and Catch, which is just about how to help your children pray. We were talking about that on Sunday, weren't we? This might be something that you can explore. Just offer really gently and in a way that fits with people's lives and the way that we consume content at the moment, really.
And everything on your website is free, isn't it? And the courses are free as well.
They are, yes.
So they just go to the Parenting for Faith website and then have a look at courses to find the Parenting for Faith course.
Yeah, so parentingforfaith.org, and you can, when you go on, you can click if you're a parent or a church. I know most of you, many of you are lots of those, but more than one of those things, but whichever one you're representing, or just click on courses, and it explains the different courses. So there's babies and toddlers, which is really, really bite-sized, and like little 5 to 10 minute videos for parents of under 5s. And that doesn't assume that people already have faith or are kind of already exploring that. So lots of people use that in a toddler group that has a mixture of people who go to church and people who don't. There's the Parenting Teens, which we kind of say is for parents of kids 10 or older, that sort of age range, just recognizing that their brains are a little bit different and that stage is different and how to apply it there. There's the original course, which is sort of the flagship one that covers this in the most depth. Parenting as a church leader, which is kind of my favorite, a little bit of a soft spot of, it's just there's unique challenges and unique strengths of if you're a children's leader or a worship leader or a church leader and your kids are growing up in that environment. There's so much good that can come from that, but it can also be a little bit scary about how to help them navigate that. So I'd really encourage you to do that if you're leading and you've got kids. And then the Grandparenting for Faith course, that's our newest one, is in partnership with CYM. So there is a small charge for that one. But that's just for anyone, a grandparent or grandparent generation, whether or not you live anywhere near your grandchildren, whether or not they have faith or their parents have faith. We look at all those different scenarios and what it might look like. But again, it's just about confidence. It's just about tools and how to really make the most of that.
Because I think we do know that the truth is that quite often grandparents are the ones bringing children to church. So equipping grandparents to do these tools, it's not just parents.
Yeah, absolutely. And even, people, as I say, if they don't have their grandchildren nearby, there's often people of a older generation who have passion, who have some time to invest in, whether it's the children's groups or the toddler group or going into schools or the children in their own families, their own grandchildren or nieces or nephews, that kind of thing. And yes, it looks a little bit different to when you're the parent and carer, and we talk about that and address that. But it can be so powerful, those different relationships in a child's life.
Can we come back to one of the tools was about a window, like, is it opening windows?
Yeah, creating windows.
Creating windows.
I like opening windows, though. That could be a thing.
Bit of fresh air.
Yeah.
So creating windows. And I wonder, can you give us some examples? Because I think maybe it's a British thing, but we tend not to do vulnerability very much. We tend to be quite private about our personal lives, but particularly about our faith.
Mm.
Part of the way to pass on faith requires people seeing it or talking about it. So whether that's as a parent, whether that's a grandparent or a church leader, how do we create more windows, and how do we overcome that British privateness
Yeah.
so that young people, or even just other people in church that are new, or people outside of church, how can you give us some examples of how you might do that?
Yeah, and you've made a really good point there, that actually when I first heard about creating windows, I was a student and I didn't have children. I didn't have many children in my life, but I had flatmates who weren't Christians. And so it was tiny, tiny tweaks. And it was things like, instead of reading my Bible in my room, reading it at the breakfast table and leaving it out. And it can be things like, lots of us read our Bibles on our phones. The Mo Bible is a thing now. And your kids don't know if you're just scrolling Instagram, or if you're doing your Bible reading app, whatever it might be. So it can be as simple as showing them, hey, I'm just going onto the Bible app now. I'm not really sure what this doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm gonna try and find out about that, or I'm gonna ask someone about that later. Or, whoa, that I've read this passage loads of times, but that verse, whoa, that's really feels like God is speaking into that difficult situation. I'm going to save that as my lock screen, or I'm going to write it on a post-it and put it by the kettle, or whatever it might be. The way I look for the tweaks is anything that makes it so they can see or hear something that they wouldn't otherwise. So as you say, lots of faith happens in your head, or at times that they don't see or hear it. So they're either asleep, or they're at school, or they're out at clubs, or whatever it might be. So if you only ever pray in your head, see if you could sometimes pray out loud. And it feels weird. Let's just name it. It does. It feels really awkward and uncomfortable, but actually it doesn't take very long to get used to that. Or leaving stuff out. If you are someone who reads a physical Bible, don't put it away. Don't put it straight back on the shelf. Just leave it out. It's such a tiny, tiny tweak. But then your nosy kids can go and see where it's been left open. Or, if you're the church leader or the children's leader, taking that example, they're not going to see on your breakfast table. But you could say, I actually felt really nervous about the session this morning. I don't know this story very well. So I was just reading it through on my Bible this morning, because it just gives them that little snapshot, that tiny, tiny glimpse into, oh, okay, this is what it looks like for some people. That's how faith might be real. That's what Bible reading looks like for other people. Okay, I can start finding my own version.
Yeah, and very simple things like we often say the same spiel before giving, before the offering goes round in church.
Mm.
And it's often to do with making people feel comfortable, or telling people where the money's going, or I don't know. But if you shared a little bit of this is how me and my family decide how much we're going to give, or we do a
Yes.
tithe, or I was really convicted the other day that we need to be more generous and buy people dinner more, that kind of thing.
Mm. Mm.
Those little moments, it's literally 10 words, but it allows somebody to see how the Holy Spirit's convicting and changing and transforming us, and allows, it shows faith in progress. And I guess that's the point, is that we don't want to always show the finished item, because it feels too unachievable, doesn't it? It feels polished and perfect and very adult.
Yeah. Yes. And the thing to keep in mind actually is, if you were the perfect polished Christian, actually that wouldn't be very helpful to children and young people, because do you not think, right? You'd just be setting them up for something that they couldn't succeed. So showing your messy, imperfect, I got it wrong, I'm still figuring it out, is really powerful. And I love that example about giving, because that is a classic, just direct debit or QR code or whatever. There is nothing physical for kids to see or understand that process. I know a family that they do most of their giving online, but have started having a thing of either taking coins or taking food to go to the food bank to church, and just framing part of our worship is that we give something, and this is what it looks like. By the way, we also do it online, age appropriately. But just to, again, otherwise that's totally invisible. How would they know that happens, or what that looks like? And it doesn't need to be, sit everyone down in an hour's long explanation. It's one sentence, or one grabbing a tin of beans as you go out the door. Yeah, whatever it might be.
And it's just how people parent anyway. At some point you sort of say, well, we can't buy that because we can't afford it, because we have a budget. What's a budget? And da 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 da.
Yes.
So as the way that people would normally parent, you also say, well, we're not going to spend that because we want to give some money to this. And then that opens up a conversation. So it's not rocket science, this stuff, but it is pulling ourselves out of that really private world where we tend to stay with our spirituality and making it just a little bit more public. And I hope it doesn't make people feel really vulnerable. I hope it makes people feel, I don't know quite what the word is, trusting your family with your heart. And that, I guess that is vulnerability. But it's not so you can be judged. It's so that people want to come on the journey with you. And what a more beautiful, I was talking to some friends at the weekend about this idea of what is the good life. And we talked about the fact that you don't just want to have a great life that you look at and go, my life's great. You want your spouse and your kids to have a great, good life, to be really in a good relationship, to be healthy, to have achievement and be contributing. And you actually want to be able to look across the table and go, yeah, we're doing this together. Like we're all actually tracking together and in this together. And that there's something about this framing and creating windows that allows you to do it together. And that moment of across the table next to each other in church, we're in this together. And that moment is very precious. And that unity that you get when you're worshiping together, it's that we're all pursuing God together. And that is very unique. And we need to kind of coax people into coach them how to share and have those moments, because I think it's not natural.
No. And just picking up on what you said there about vulnerability, because I think that's a really important point. Sometimes when we teach on this, people are like, oh gosh, I don't want my kids to see my entire incomings and outgoings of my bank account, or I don't want to see that my journal where I've ranted and raved at God, or whatever it might be. And no, that's fine. They don't need to see the whole thing. You don't have to lay out every detail. It's your heart and your relationship and your information. It's up to you how much you share. And often just the jump from showing and saying nothing at all to one little thing, one tiny little glimpse of leaving the Bible out, or explaining about why you're giving to this thing rather than that thing, or whatever it might be. It's tiny little tweaks. You don't need to lay your soul bare and then worry that they're going to tell the rest of church as well. So don't feel yourself like you have to do that, but I think also communicate that to the families in your church, that it can be tiny things, can be really significant. It doesn't need to be laying out everything.
No, it's so good. And I think we can get this perspective as Christian parents that I've got to do all these things. I've got to pray at bedtime. I've got to, I don't know, teach the children to do this, that, and the other. And again, it feels like this list and I'm failing. There's often this sense of like, oh, so-and-so is a better Christian parent, or their kids are better behaved, therefore they're probably teaching the Bible better than me, whether it's personality or whether that's true. But we're so judgmental of ourselves, not of other people, usually of ourselves. So it's trying to take the guilt off of this, and as church leaders, children's leaders, other parents, to get alongside other parents and say, you're doing a great job. Like we're not telling you to do these things because we think you're bad parents. We think you're great parents. Give your kids more windows to see how great you are. But it's a little bit in the tone of how we say this, isn't it? That it can feel like more to do, or it can feel like that's actually quite easy. No problem. I can do that. So have you got any tips on like how to not feel like this is just one more thing, more judgment or more pressure?
Yeah. And I love the way that you've talked about that all the way through. I think you named it a bit earlier, actually. It's just calling out where parents already have these skills and values and saying, hey, what would it look like to apply that to faith a little bit more? So, you see a kid, they've learned to tie their shoes. Wow, like that's really cool. How did you do it? Did you look it up on YouTube together? Did you practice? There are so many ways that we help our children to learn things, and we just sort of forget about the faith stuff, or we think church will do it, or we're just too busy. And I think if we can say to parents, you've already got those skills, you've already got those tools, it's just those little tweaks to help use them to grow faith that's really helpful. I find the kind of key tools framework really useful, because it's, in my head, it's like a Swiss Army knife in your back pocket, right? It's like it's not about sitting down and getting your kids to do a devotional. This is my job, kind of, and I cannot get my children to do that. I don't have the skills or the patience. Yeah, exactly. But there are a million questions that come up, or situations, or things that they hear about, tiny moments and opportunities where I can think, okay, hang on a sec, I've got a tool for that. How can I create a window into this? Or how can I just spot a bit of a funny view there? Let's just unwind that. Or this is a way, if you're really interested in this country that you've never been interested in before, like, let's talk about that and where God's heart is in that. And I think for me, as someone with kids in 4 different places, with different apps and different homework and different payment systems, like, I do not need more to do, even though this is the most important thing to me. It'll just go down the list because I'm not gonna get in trouble like I am if my kids don't do their homework or I don't pay for their thing. But if it's tiny things that are part of what we're doing anyway, it's back to that Deuteronomy 6 again, isn't it? It's not, and sorry, I'm not knocking devotion. If you can do that, that is amazing. And I love that. And we will get there one day, please, Jesus. But, those moments where they're strapped in the car, or you're walking back from school, or, they're having a nightmare and it's 3:00 in the morning and it's not actually what you had planned to talk about how to deal with stuff when you feel scared and how to ask God to help you feel safe and loved. But that's the opportunity that's kind of presenting itself. And it's, often it's an extra 30 seconds, if that, to add on, something from one of these tools. And for me, that's what makes it feel doable. If it's another thing on the list, it just goes to the bottom of the list and doesn't happen. So yeah, it's got to be part of what we're already doing.
I just think there's something about you don't have to get it right the first time either. I was just thinking about that nightmare thing or whatever. When emotions are heightened or when you're put on the spot, sometimes a kid asks you a question and you give a really rubbish answer.
Yeah.
Or you're just like, I don't know. And then, but you're allowed to say to the child a day later, a week later, do you know, we were talking about this thing. I didn't give you a very good answer. I've been thinking about it. Can we talk about it again? I read my Bible and this stuck out to me. And I thought that applies to that conversation we had. Or I wasn't in the right frame of mind to talk to you properly. And now I've got a bit more headspace. Can we pray about that? You're allowed a do-over. And I think sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to have the answer in the moment on the top of our head. And even the best church leaders don't always nail it. So why do we expect everybody else to nail it? So I think it's that grace, and you're allowed to come back to it. And I think the same for children's leaders, church leaders. You're allowed to say, can we come back to that thing I talked about? I've got more revelation, or I've got more insight, or I've been praying for you, and I feel like all of that was good, but this is the thing that really needs it. And you were allowed to do that. So don't put too much pressure to get it right the first time. And
actually, that in itself is so powerful and so helpful because it models you don't have to have all the answers and get it right first time. One of my kids has an amazing teacher, and she was talking about we were talking about spelling, and she said, I really struggle with spelling, and so we do this thing where whenever I'm writing on the board and I can't work out how to spell something, I write it both ways, like to see if that helps me, and if it looks, and if not, I stop and I go and get a dictionary and I look it up. And she said one kid was saying, like, you're the teacher, you could just prepare it in advance, or you could just look it up on your phone. And she was like, well, no, because actually what I want you to, I'm sharing you what I do and what you want to do. And I think so much of life is like that. You don't want to do that because you feel like an idiot, right? You don't want to look stupid or weak or vulnerable, like you don't know the answers, maybe even more so around other parents or people at church more than your own children, though I get that's a thing as well. But actually just have that vulnerability of, oh, we've just hit a situation, I have no idea what to do, I've never been the parent of a 13-year-old who's been bullied and taking an exam before, or whatever it is, insert scenario here. So I'm going to do what I can do in the moment, and we're maybe going to start this conversation, but I want to find out more, or I want to pray about it, or I want to talk to someone, or I want to think about it, or I want to go on this journey with you. And there are things that you're going to teach me as well as I'm going to teach you. We're co-journeying, we're both on a relationship with God, and that involves a lot of getting stuck, going the wrong way, falling over, sometimes making U-turns. Like, that is all part of a life with God. And I think the more that we can model and share and show that as church leaders and as children's leaders, as well as parents, I think that's really good for our children and young people to see, and actually sets them up really well for a lifelong journey of faith, not just to kind of behave well and do the right things whilst they're in church and in an activity.
Oh, amen. Because we're going to mess it up, aren't we? We all have at some point. And the better lesson is to learn how to fix our mistakes rather than to get it perfect the first time. Like,
Yeah.
it's just not the most life-changing lesson, is it? Like, because
No.
yeah, learning to get back up and learning to say sorry to God, learning to say sorry to other people, that's more important. I feel like I've learned a lot, Anna. Thank you.
Me from you too. It's been a great conversation.
Brilliant. Well, hopefully people listening to this will think parenting for faith, that sounds fascinating. If they know about it already, then this is a good jog to their memory of like, oh yes, I could drip this into the way I lead services, into my conversations with parents. If they've not heard of parenting for faith, the website, is that where you'd send them first?
Yeah, so parentingforfaith.org is the website, or on social media, we're Parenting for Faith BRF, most active on Facebook and Instagram.
Brilliant. So hopefully people get in touch, look out for Thrive, and please do support the parents and families in your church because they want it. And that's what the research says. Parents want the support and want churches to be relationally connected with parents. So as all of you are leading churches and involved in families around the country, around the globe, seeing young families find faith and grow in their relationship with Jesus, keep supporting them. It's a good job to do. Thanks for your time, Anna.
Thanks so much, Melanie.
You can connect with Parenting for Faith through their website and podcast, parentingforfaith.org. You can read the full results of Sarah Holmes's Taking the Pulse research that I mentioned in the intro, or a short interview I did with her on the Roots website. There are links to both in the show notes. According to Sarah's research, 30% of parents interviewed asked for a broader variety of resources to support family discipleship. Parents wanted shorter, flexible devotional activities and ones that might cater for children with additional needs. Roots can help. Roots produce a weekly resource called Thrive to support faith at home. It includes a short devotional, images and discussion questions, prayers, and fun activities that will get your families getting creative, baking, or out and about exploring God's Word and God's world. If you already subscribe to Roots, you can download these weekly PDFs and share them with your church or toddler group families. Print them and hand them out at the end of your meetings, or send them in the WhatsApp group or your church's Facebook group or email newsletter. If you haven't tried Roots yet, what's stopping you? Head over to our website and explore our subscriptions. We support gathered worship, preaching, all-age intergenerational services, children and youth groups, under 5s and toddler groups, Bible studies, holiday clubs, outreach and seasonal events. You name it, we've got ideas and resources, templates, videos and more, all to support you in leading church. See everything that's on offer at rootsforchurches.com, where you can take out a free trial. You can explore digital or add on our stunning full-colour magazines that help you prepare and share offline. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and share it with leaders in your church and network, and leave a review as that helps others find it. Together, we can grow.